This story begins with our protagonist, a young boy named Hue King. He was disabled due to an illness, but when he turned 18, he acquired a broken ability. This ability allowed him to turn defeated enemies into his subordinates. Like any other day, he had come to a fruit stand with his subordinates to steal fruit, using the excuse that his disability was caused by the fruit from this place. His team was mainly composed of him and a girl named Zinnia. She was his childhood friend, a simple girl with great combat abilities. He was the leader of the group, and she executed his plans. Both of them had worked hard for several years, and now they had a couple of henchmen. In the whole city, there were only 3 fruit stands, and they had already taken control of the southern family's yard. Now, they had come to try and take over the most important point in the entire district. The owner of the stand refused to believe that Hue Kang's disability was caused by the fruit from his stand, so he ordered his group to beat them up. To his surprise, instead of fighting, Hue Kang's subordinates stole the fruit and fled. In a matter of seconds, all their fruit disappeared. Seeing this, the owner became furious and sent all his men to retrieve the fruit. But while he was distracted, Xinian seized the commotion and stole the license for his business. Quickly, Hue King called the police to report an illegal fruit stand. Everything was going according to his plan, and the police arrived within minutes. Meanwhile, a truck driver and his sister were transporting illegal goods. Seeing the police car, the driver became nervous and quickly swerved, entering a small alley at high speed. In that alley, Hue King was enjoying his victory. Seeing the speeding truck, he tried to move off the road using a secret technique, but to his misfortune, an apple blocked his path, and the truck ended up crashing into him. His last thought was that if he hadn't been born with a disability, he would have avoided his death. A few seconds later, he opened his eyes in front of a beautiful girl. The first thing he did upon waking up was to move his paralyzed legs. The girl explained to him that he was now in a spirit state. Bluntly, he pointed at the girl and asked who she was. Upon hearing this, the girl became angry and started erasing his fingers using her powers. She was the chief editor, also known as the creator goddess. She explained that he had died, and along with him, his previous world had been destroyed. She revealed that he was a comic book character, and that was why he had gained the ability to turn defeated enemies into his subordinates. Hue King couldn't believe that he had died, as he was so close to dominating the world and reaching the pinnacle of the human race. Since his greatest desire was to reach the pinnacle, the girl decided to give him another chance to be reborn in another world. Hue King was delighted to hear this, and the only thing he asked for was to have healthy limbs in his reincarnation and the power to regenerate them so that he would never be disabled again. She agreed to grant his wish, and upon hearing this, Hue King was happy because in his new world, he wouldn't have to worry about being disabled, and nothing could stop him from reaching the pinnacle. Using her powers, she sent him to his new world just before he could ask for one last favor. He woke up in his new body at the bottom of the ocean. Now, he could breathe underwater, but his body felt strange. When he looked at his reflection in a crystal, he realized he was a small octopus. Seeing his new form, he panicked. He began to get angry with the goddess for mocking him and reincarnating him as a small octopus. Realizing that getting angry wouldn't change the situation, he started thinking about how to use his limbs for the first time. Using the knowledge from his previous life, he managed to move for the first time, and as he practiced, some fish started to move rapidly toward him, so he looked confused to see what was happening. It didn't take long for him to realize that all the fish were being absorbed by a whale, and a window warned him that a whale's favorite food was octopuses. The whale began to whisper words to him, and seeing that the whale could talk, he tried to negotiate with it. However, what he didn't know was that the whale had no intention of negotiating in the slightest. The whale began to absorb him along with the other fish. As he was being absorbed, he wondered why he didn't have any special abilities like in his previous life. At that moment, a system window appeared, notifying him that the system had not fully activated, so for now, he could only use the original octopus abilities. The first ability of octopuses was flexible limbs, and the second ability was the special ability called spray ink. He used the ability and expelled ink at the whale to escape, but to his misfortune, due to his small size compared to the whale, the ink had no effect, and he was absorbed by the whale. 10 minutes passed, and he was still alive thanks to his strong suction cups holding onto the whale's tongue. His energy was slowly depleting, but he was determined to live and reach the pinnacle. After several minutes, his energy ran out, and he finally detached from the tongue and fell into the whale's throat. As he fell, he noticed the whale's blowholes, and at that moment, he realized that the lack of his energy was due to the lack of oxygen. Both he and the whale were running out of oxygen. He quickly concluded that it wouldn't be long before the whale surfaced to breathe. He wanted to seize this opportunity, so, using his last strength, he blocked the whale's blowholes with his small body. At that moment, the whale realized that he was still alive and desperately leaped out of the water, attempting various movements to dislodge the octopus from its blowholes. In the mouth of the whale, Hue King was also reaching his limit. At this rate, he would die before the whale. Luckily, the whale reached its limit and died. Quickly, he escaped from the whale's mouth to breathe. After the whale died, its body began to turn into energy, and that energy entered Hue King's body. As a reward for defeating the whale, the system granted him growth points and experience. He tried to open the inventory to see his rewards, but the system notified him that it had not been activated yet, so he didn't have the authority to view the rewards. To activate the system, he had to make a soul contract with an inhabitant of Atlantis, and that would also unlock the double entanglement system. After thinking for a while, he saw bright lights coming from the bottom of the sea. He headed towards the lights, and after a few minutes, he reached the coral reef area, where the system rewarded him with more bonuses. He leveled up from level 1 to level 3, and with this, his ink ability was also improved. The cooldown time for the ability decreased from 5 minutes to 1 minute. When he used the ability, he noticed that the affected area had increased by 30%. Hue King was not at all pleased, as he thought the ability was useless and had no special effect. Suddenly, he began to hear strange noises. He thought it might be another enemy, so he shouted with all his might for them to show themselves. At that moment, small octopuses that had been hiding under the rocks emerged. The octopuses thanked him for taking care of the whale, as it had been terrorizing them. Now that he could communicate with them, he planned to tell them about his current situation. So, he first asked if they knew about the inhabitants of Atlantis. The small octopuses had no knowledge of Atlantis at all. Seeing this, he asked them what they did daily if they didn't know anything. They told him that they spent their days collecting pearls from the shells. Upon hearing this, he thought he had been reborn in a marine hunter simulator as a small octopus to collect shells. While they were talking, they suddenly heard two marine creatures talking. Quickly, the octopuses grabbed Hue King and hid under the rocks. The two voices belonged to the rotten fish and the rotten shrimp, and the octopuses told him that they had come with the intention of collecting the shells they had gathered. The two appeared. The level 4 catfish was Xiao Chuan, and the level 4 lobster was Guangxi. The two were talking about their boss who resided in Coral City. It was the first time the lobster had met their boss, so he was obligated to give him a gift as a show of respect. These two were like his former subordinates, as they had come to collect protection fees. The lobster approached and hit the rock, ordering the small octopuses to hand over the protection fee. Hue King didn't take long to realize that they were like the gangsters of Earth who extorted the weak to obtain money. At that moment, he remembered that they had previously been talking about Coral City, so he quickly concluded that the key to becoming stronger lay in Coral City. The lobster abruptly grabbed one of the octopuses and demanded 300 shells. This was like the law of the jungle, and Hue King had experienced such situations many times in his previous life. He decided to leave his hiding place to get away from the scene since he had nothing to do with this. He abandoned the hiding spot, and the two gangsters noticed him for the first time. The catfish hit him because he didn't follow the rules. If someone new came to the gangsters' area, they had to greet them as a sign of respect. Then the lobster also hit him, and now they intended to break all his tentacles so he would learn the rules. Hue King fled since it was the best way to avoid getting hurt. He couldn't fight them as a small octopus, but what he didn't know was that the lobster was very fast. In the blink of an eye, he was caught, and as a punishment for trying to escape, they intended to make him pay 3 times the amount of shells as the others. He was furious, as first, he had been transported to another world as a small octopus, then he had been swallowed by a whale, and now he was being abused by some seafood. The lobster and the catfish thought he was saying strange things due to fear. Furious, Hue King used his enhanced ink ability and expelled a lot of ink on them. Quickly, he took advantage of the moment and managed to free himself from the lobster's claws. But because he had expelled too much ink, he now couldn't distinguish in which direction he should flee. Then, one of the small octopuses entered the ink cloud and grabbed him. Subsequently, they carried him away from the gangsters and took him to another hiding place. The small octopuses were impressed to see that he could expel a lot of ink, and they also suggested that they should take this opportunity to flee as far as possible. Fleeing was like an insult to him, as in his past life, he had never run away without first seeking revenge against his enemies. The two gangsters were still trapped in the ink and were unable to use their eyes, so he had planned to get revenge on them, making them pay double. He quickly looked around and saw a couple of seaweeds, and upon seeing the seaweeds, he had an idea. After a while, the lobster finally managed to escape from the ink. He was furious and wanted to make the octopuses pay for rebelling. Looking around for the octopuses, he saw one of the small tentacles behind a rock. Without hesitation, he quickly advanced toward the rocks. As he approached the rocks, he saw a piece of seaweed but didn't pay much attention to it. What he didn't know is that he had fallen into the protagonist's trap. Hue King signaled the small octopuses, and the 3 of them grabbed the seaweed and pulled it with all their strength. Slowly, the seaweed began to wrap around the lobster's body. Hue King couldn't help but think about how intelligent he was, and he believed that for the lobster to be able to defeat him, it would need to train for another 100 years. But to his misfortune, the seaweed also trapped him, and because of this, he ended up kissing the lobster. Desperate, he ordered the small octopuses to stop, but they didn't listen and continued to pull with all their strength. After a while, they realized that they had not only trapped the lobster but also Hue King. Now that he was tied alongside the lobster, he remembered that he now had the body of an octopus. With a bit of effort, he managed to escape from the seaweed. Quickly, he covered the lobster's mouth to prevent it from calling the catfish. Now that they had trapped the lobster, the small octopuses began to celebrate their victory. Hue King was furious and intended to punish them for tying him alongside the lobster, so he quickly tied up the small octopuses to prevent them from causing any more problems. For capturing a level 3 lobster and 3 level 1 octopuses, as a reward, the system strengthened all his limbs. Now he could cling to things 20 times heavier than him. He thought his victory was assured, but behind him, a shadow began to grow large. Both the octopuses and the lobster were terrified and tried to warn him that he was in danger. This shadow belonged to the catfish, and taking advantage of Hue King's distraction, it used its ability Devour, which allowed it to swallow its prey silently using water currents. Hue King started to have a bad feeling, so he unconsciously dodged the catfish's attack. This was because octopuses had highly developed nerves, which were very sensitive and could detect even the slightest change in water currents. The catfish quickly realized that he was different from the other octopuses, so he used his best ability, and gradually his body began to become more muscular. Then he used his other skill called Explosive Charge and advanced quickly toward Hue King. Fighting in close combat wasn't his strong suit. That's why he was the one who used his wits, and Xinyan, his childhood friend, was the one who handled the fights. At that moment, an idea came to his mind. He remembered that he had recently leveled up his limbs, so he quickly advanced toward the lobster with the intention of testing his new enhanced strength. He activated his level 4 ability, and gradually his tentacles began to grow and become stronger. Using his newfound strength, he easily lifted the lobster's body and started to swing it like a bat. Using the force of the swing, he struck the lobster's body against the catfish. This blow was so strong that the lobster lost one of its claws, and the catfish fell back several meters onto some rocks. The catfish's body got stuck among the rocks, and Hue King approached the lobster. Seeing what he was capable of, the lobster began to feel fear, and its attitude changed completely. He took the lobster's claw and showed that he intended to make them pay for their actions. The lobster, upon seeing this, began to feel even more fear. However, what it didn't know was that Hue King's intention was not to use the claw against it. He approached the catfish and with an evil expression, he aimed at its rear end. The lobster started to cry upon seeing its claw touching such a dirty place. Without mercy, Hue King delivered a series of quick blows to the catfish's sensitive area. Seeing how ruthless he was, both the octopuses and the lobster were terrified. Desperate, the catfish used its special ability called Secret Slime, and its entire body began to exude a disgusting substance. He seized this opportunity, using all his strength to free himself from the rocks, and without a second thought, he escaped from the area. Now that his companion had fled, Hue King intended to make the lobster pay for its actions. Additionally, for defeating a larger and stronger enemy, the system rewarded him with a new skill called Camouflage Change. Despite gaining a valuable skill, he was still upset. So, he revealed to the lobster that it was now going to be the next to receive its punishment. Seeing that it had no other option, the lobster began to beg for forgiveness. It had been following the wrong leader for half of its life, so it asked if it could become one of his subordinates. Hue King was shocked because his intention had never been to make it fear him. But now the lobster was praying to him as if he were a god. Without thinking twice, he accepted to turn it into an ally, but with the condition that it would reveal all the information it knew so far. The catfish fled and arrived in the Coral City. Then, it went to meet its boss, asking for revenge against the little octopus. He told his boss that the octopus had mocked him even though it knew he had a very powerful boss. The dragon crocodile, upon hearing this, became angry because he had sent them to retrieve a treasure, but they had returned empty-handed and had also lost to a nobody. The catfish told him that he was very weak because he hadn't yet established a contract, so he asked if he could help him establish a contract. The dragon crocodile also thought he was weak because he didn't have a contract, so he agreed to help, but with the condition that when he established a contract, he had to eliminate all the trash from the city so that no one would know he was hiding. The dragon crocodile was injured and couldn't go out often, so he entrusted Ningi, his contract holder, with helping the catfish find someone to establish the contract. Ningi was an Atlantean. He asked the catfish to follow him, and as they left the dragon crocodile's room, they encountered a level 8 woman named Quirrell. He greeted her while wondering how she had ended up with them. The moment the woman saw him, she slapped him hard. Ningi, confused, asked her why she had slapped him. She responded that she didn't like his unpleasant smile. Since he had entered the Kui family, he had not achieved any useful accomplishments, while the children of other families were helping their families by catching some sea creatures for them. She felt ashamed, seeing the other families going out with their marine animals while she spent her days walking around. Ningi clarified that all the creatures he had provided had been killed due to his experiments. She was a sadistic individual obsessed with experiments, and upon hearing this, the catfish didn't want to establish a contract with someone like her. However, upon seeing the catfish, Quirong thought that Ningi had brought her a new creature. Without a second thought, she quickly pounced on him. She was impressed by his size and was determined to establish a contract with him. Ningi was relieved to know that he no longer had to find a person for the catfish. Quirong had an assistant named Xinyan, who had lost her memory. She ordered her assistant to take her bag home while she went for a ride on her new marine creature. In the suburbs of Coral City, Hue King was heading towards Coral City along with the lobster and the small octopuses. Along the way, he got rid of the small octopuses to prevent them from causing him further problems in the future. He was riding on the lobster, which had regained its claw thanks to the slow regeneration of arthropod limbs. The lobster had told him everything it knew, so now he had a clearer idea of this new world. The Atlanteans resembled humans but had the ability to breathe underwater. Over time, they had developed their own civilization beneath the sea, far from the wild areas that were home to a wide variety of strange creatures. Marine beings could establish a contract with the Atlanteans. After signing the contract, both the Atlantean and the marine creature could gain the double entanglement ability. Hue King had to establish a contract with an Atlantean to activate the system, allowing him to acquire powerful abilities and other advantages in this new world. He came to the conclusion that he wasn't the only one with the system, which made him even more curious about what the double entanglement technique was. After walking for a while, they arrived at a peripheral area, which was a favorite spot for Atlanteans to take a stroll. It was at this moment that Hue King realized that the lobster had no knowledge of the system's existence. Previously, he had used his questions with the lobster, so now the lobster was only returning short answers and bits of information. He had used his poison with the lobster as he still didn't fully trust it. He had promised the lobster that if it was obedient, he would provide the antidote periodically. Now his mission was to explore the Coral City to better understand this world and become stronger. As they headed towards the city, they saw the catfish with Quiron along the way. The lobster immediately realized that the catfish had already signed a contract with Quiron. He explained to Hue King that she was a well-known figure in Coral City for being a sadist. She enjoyed capturing marine creatures and then torturing them to death. If they both fell into her hands, they would be in serious trouble. Seeing a human, he couldn't help but wonder why he hadn't been reborn as an Atlantean instead of a small octopus. The lobster panicked and told him that the best option now was to flee, as if the catfish were to discover their betrayal, both of them would be tortured. Hue King reassured him because he had a plan in mind, as octopuses were flexible invertebrates and could distort their bodies to the fullest. Using his new skill of changing camouflage, he changed the color of his skin to mimic Quirong's appearance. After changing his appearance, he felt proud and like a real genius, and as he passed by Quirong, she greeted them, thinking that he was her older sister. Hue King had to try to appear natural because he couldn't let the catfish discover his true identity. While the protagonist and Quirong were talking, the catfish asked the lobster if it had established a contract with Quirong's older sister. The lobster was lucky because what the catfish didn't know was that Quirong's older sister had already established a contract with another sea creature, and an Atlantean could only establish one contract with a sea creature at a time. If he found out about this, both of them would be in danger. Nervously, the lobster told him that he didn't need to worry about him after having left him previously in order to escape. The more Hue King talked with Quirong, the deeper the conversation became, and it couldn't be natural. So, to end the conversation, Hue King told Quirong that he had to leave because he needed to visit his sister. But to his bad luck, she was also going to visit her sister, so she proposed that they go together in their sea creatures. As they were talking, the catfish began to detect a strong scent that was quite familiar coming from Quirong's sister-in-law. It didn't take him long to realize that she wasn't Quirong's sister-in-law but the octopus from before. Fish could distinguish scents through their tentacles and their sense of smell. Quickly, he informed Quirong that she wasn't her sister-in-law but a marine creature. Upon hearing this, Hue King transformed back into his octopus form, and the lobster quickly distanced itself. The lobster was angry with the catfish for revealing its identity, despite having abandoned it in the past. The catfish felt no sympathy, as he only cared about himself. The elderly Quirong was delighted to have found a level 3 creature. She didn't expect to have these kinds of gains on the same day she had managed to sign a contract with a sea beast. Now, she was ready to capture them both. She was obsessed with mistreating marine creatures, and if both fell into her hands, they would be in serious trouble. So, Hue King gathered his courage and planned to fight against her using his old trick. The lobster was very familiar with this old trick, and he picked up the lobster again to use as a bat. Seeing that they were going to fight, Quirong and the catfish used the double entanglement ability. A dazzling light appeared, and at that moment, Hue King finally understood what the double entanglement ability was. The bodies of Quirong and the catfish merged, and a level 10 One-Punch Man appeared. Now the catfish had become much stronger, making it impossible for him to lose. The catfish asked Hue King if he was amazed by his new appearance, but he replied that he didn't know that after using the double entanglement ability, marine creatures turned into corpses. Due to the mockery, the catfish attacked him with his fist, which was so powerful that it even created steam in the underwater environment. Quickly, Hue King used the lobster as a shield to block the attack. But to his misfortune, the blow was too powerful and the shield didn't provide much protection, and they both fell back several meters. He was lucky and received little damage, but the lobster, who took the full force of the punch, was unconscious. In the blink of an eye, the catfish appeared behind him and hit him again with its fists. Fortunately, he dodged the attack at the last second and used his inkjet ability. The same move wouldn't work twice in a row against the catfish, so he began to accumulate energy in his fist to use his lethal blow, which was so powerful that it could destroy the entire area affected by the ink. Quickly, Hue King realized that if he were hit by that attack, he wouldn't have a chance to survive, so he looked for a place to hide. The catfish used its lethal blow and created a tornado in the underwater environment. But because this ability consumed a lot of energy, the double entanglement ability ended, and their bodies separated. Seeing that the technique had lasted so little time, Quirong blamed the catfish for being useless, while the duration was based on the strength of both. While the catfish thought the old woman was incapable of doing anything for herself and only caused more problems. Interestingly, the catfish looked toward the area of the lethal blow and was amazed to see that it had destroyed half of the area, including the rocks and the ground. And suddenly, a very strong odor began to emanate from the lobster's body, and as the little octopus was nowhere to be found, Quirong thought it had been destroyed by the blow. She picked up the lobster's body because she wanted to take it home to cook it. She got on the catfish and ordered it to take her home. The catfish could still faintly smell octopus coming from the lobster's body. His sense of smell was correct, as Hue King was camouflaged within the lobster's body, and he was alive thanks to his camouflage. And after a while, they arrived in a well-lit city. For Hue King, this city had the same feeling as human cities. Most of the wealthy people in the city were accompanied by marine creatures. In contrast, the poor people couldn't even afford clothing. In this world, only elite Atlanteans could own elite marine creatures. All those without money went to a place to receive charity. The person in charge of the place stared at Quirong and her marine creature. After several minutes, they finally reached Quirong's house. She was exhausted, so she ordered her servants to prepare some food for her. Hue King was still with them because he hadn't had a chance to escape on the way. Quirong handed the lobster's body to Xinian to prepare dinner for tonight. He planned to wait until he reached the kitchen since this was the perfect opportunity to escape. He intended to investigate the city first to find the contractors of the marine creatures. Seeing the servant's face, he realized she was Xinian, his childhood friend. He didn't know how she had also been reincarnated. After several seconds, they reached the kitchen, and now they were alone. She looked identical to Xinian, but it was strange because she had never been so obedient as to become a servant. He planned to introduce himself and ask her about her origins to clarify the doubts he had. Meanwhile, she took out the knife to cut the lobster. Just before the knife could cut, Hue King shouted at her to stop. She got scared and thought it was the voice of a ghost. Seeing her reaction, he was 100% sure that she was indeed his friend, Xinian. Hue King deactivated his camouflage to calm her and told her he didn't expect to find her in the underwater world. Upon seeing a small octopus, she panicked and started running to find Quirong. He had forgotten that he had now become a small octopus, so he quickly jumped and covered Xinian's mouth, then told her that he was Hue King, her childhood friend. Although he currently didn't understand how she had ended up in a world like this, he wanted to establish a contract with her because she was the person he trusted the most. He asked Xinian how she had ended up in the underwater world, and after thinking for several seconds, she said she didn't remember anyone named Hue King. Meanwhile, Ningyi brought food to the dragon crocodile and asked how much longer he planned to stay hidden. The dragon crocodile intended to remain hidden until his wounds had fully healed. While he was in hiding, he couldn't let the Q family learn of his existence and the contract they both had. It had been 3 months since he had reincarnated in this new world. During this time, he had survived many battles thanks to his cheat tool. The girl who had transported him to this world had promised that if he could reach the top in this new world, he could live forever. But if he didn't reach the top, his existence would be erased forever. At first, he thought the girl was just joking, but from the day he fought Uncle Ba, he realized he wasn't the only person who had traveled to this world through reincarnation. The biggest threat to him in this world was the people who had been reborn like him. Currently, he was injured, but his wound was closing very quickly. His plan was to secretly accumulate as much strength as possible to eliminate his competitors. Before he could finish explaining his plan to Ningi, he left, thinking that he was talking about strange things as usual. He thought that Ningi had been acting strangely lately. He was only trying to reveal his plan, but Ningi didn't pay attention and always left. The food Ningi had brought him wasn't very appetizing, so he decided to quietly sneak a look in the kitchen. Silently, he reached the central courtyard, and through the kitchen window, he heard Xinian talking about how they weren't from this world. Immediately, he realized that they, too, were reincarnated. Hue King was telling Xinian that he already had victory assured. But suddenly, an out-of-control truck appeared and ended his life. Then he was reincarnated in this world as a little octopus. She didn't believe him and thought he was an experienced scammer since he was very good at inventing extravagant stories. Currently, Hue King couldn't do much to change Xinian's mind. At that moment, a system window appeared to inform him that the contract had hidden clauses. The first one was that after signing the contract, users would receive supernatural abilities, and the memories of the reincarnated would be unlocked, along with 250 more clauses. Knowing this, Hue King was willing to sign the contract so that she could regain her memories from her previous life. So, you took a contract from the system window and asked Xinian to sign with her fingerprint to recover her memories. She refused because she still thought he was a scammer, and the police had recently educated them about these types of scams. The system notified him that to sign the contract, both users had to agree, and since Xinyu didn't want to sign, they couldn't establish a contract at the moment. At that moment, the dragon crocodile entered and told Xinian that Hue King was telling the truth. And upon hearing the same thing from another marine creature, she thought that both of them were accomplices trying to pull off a group scam. The dragon crocodile didn't expect to find two reincarnated individuals in the same place he was hiding. He revealed to them that he, too, was a person who had reincarnated into this world. He also told them that in this world, there were marine beings, and Atlanteans could establish contracts through the double entanglement, and only people who had reincarnated as marine beings could obtain the system. Xinian could also see the system since she was a reincarnated person. Interestingly, Hue King asked her why Xinian didn't have memories of her past life. The dragon crocodile didn't know the exact reason why some reincarnated individuals didn't have memories of their past lives. No one knew how many more reincarnated individuals existed in this world. But they all had one thing in common: they had been brought to this world by a girl named Xiang. Upon knowing that they had been reincarnated by Xiang, the dragon crocodile adopted a combat stance. Quickly, Hue King sensed the danger, so he used his tentacles to grab Xinian to save her from the dragon crocodile's attack. The dragon crocodile revealed that he intended to eliminate all the reincarnated individuals in this world to reach the top. Hue King remembered that Xiang had told him the same thing. In this new world, he had to survive and reach the top. If he failed and died, his existence would be erased. The dragon crocodile's intentions were to eliminate everyone to reach the top on his own. Seeing this, Hue King tried to buy time by saying that there was no need to eliminate others to reach the top. Now both of them were in trouble because the dragon crocodile was on a completely different level than all the previous enemies he had faced. He wasn't going to wait for Hue King to level up and cause problems in the future. He thought the octopus was like a rookie who had just completed his first mission and now faced a final boss. He noticed that the dragon crocodile had a wound on his chest, so he aimed for his chest to have a chance to win. Quickly, he used his ability and expelled ink onto the dragon crocodile, but to his bad luck, he wasn't like the previous opponents. In the blink of an eye, he cut through the ink curtain with his sharp claws. He took this opportunity and quickly swam using his tentacles to deliver a strong blow. But to his surprise, the dragon crocodile grabbed his body with his fist and threw him to the ground with all his strength. Hue King's body started bouncing off the ground. But just before it hit the ground, Xinian ran quickly and caught him. She asked him why he was willing to sacrifice his life for a mere servant. He revealed to her that in his previous life, he had promised to be by her side to protect her for her entire life. At that moment, the chain blocking his memories broke, and she began to recover her old memories. Upon knowing that the little octopus was really her childhood friend Hue King, the conditions for signing the contract were met, and she signed the contract. The signature was successful, and with this, the ability of double entanglement was activated, causing their bodies to begin merging. Both of them were teleported to the inner space of the system. In this space, Hue King had returned to his human form, but Xinian still had the same form as in her new world. In her head, she had a chain, and this chain was a seal that blocked her memories. Hue King touched the chain, and the seal began to fade and transported him into her memories. He didn't know if he had really returned to his old world. In these memories, she was desperately looking for him. He tried to get her attention, but she simply ignored him and passed through his body. At that moment, he finally understood that he was in her memories. In these memories, she heard the sounds of an accident, so she quickly went to see what was happening. When she turned the corner, the same truck that had ended Hue Kang's life appeared at high speed. And the driver of that truck was none other than Xiang herself. She was willing to end Xinyan's life so she could be reborn in this new world. After this, he returned to the system space and touched Xinyan's fingers, and a window notified him that the contract had been signed successfully. Gradually, she began to recover her memories. To dispel her doubts, Hue King took her hands and asked if she had really regained her memory. As soon as she saw his face, she slapped him hard because she thought he was pretending his emotions as always. Thanks to the contract, she regained her personality of a corrupt beauty with extreme violence. She had regained all her memories. A few minutes ago, all the memories entered her head, and now she knew that Hue King had become a small octopus. He understood that the system had unlocked all her memories, but he was surprised to see that she had understood the situation so quickly because the Xinyan he knew wasn't intelligent. She told him not to underestimate her, as in her previous life, when she was bored, she had been reading and studying. A system window appeared to inform them that both of them were going to receive rewards. As a reward, he first received experience and leveled up to level 15, and then his strength and speed increased. Now he could receive the blocked rewards for defeating a higher level killer whale. Finally, he unlocked the double entanglement ability called Sea God Knot of Class C. This was the same ability that the catfish and Quirong had used. They both agreed and used the technique to fuse their bodies into the sea god. Outside, a bright light appeared, and the dragon crocodile quickly realized that he was in danger. The double entanglement technique was activated successfully, and their bodies were fused into the level 1 sea god. Now, Hue King was in control of this new consciousness, and his body could change according to the octopus's characteristics. He had a gem on his forehead, and Xinyan was within this gem, eager to start the battle. Now that both were in the same consciousness, Xinyan's character was starting to affect him. The dragon crocodile took advantage of his distraction to attack him by surprise. But at this moment, Hue King sensed the danger and turned around to block the attack. The dragon crocodile had no intention of giving him time to learn how to use his new abilities. He mocked him, saying that attacking the newly entangled was not a fair competition. Currently, the dragon crocodile was at level 60, while Hue King was only level 15. He couldn't be too confident, as even with the double entanglement ability, he could still be defeated. The difference in levels was finally starting to show, and he instantly realized that the dragon crocodile had much more strength. Facing him was like facing the final boss of an extremely high level. Hue King remembered that the dragon crocodile had a wound on his chest, so he asked with a smile if his wound had healed. Immediately, the dragon crocodile knew he was in danger because his hands were trapped, and the octopus had many more arms than him. With a quick move, he grabbed the dragon crocodile's arm and used all his arms to strike his chest with multiple attacks. It didn't take long before the dragon crocodile was defeated. His two hands had no chance against all of Hue King's arms. A window appeared to deliver rewards for defeating an enemy at a higher level. At that moment, Quirong came to the kitchen and ordered the catfish to go and get her lobster dinner as it was taking too long. The catfish opened the kitchen door with the intention of getting the food, and inside, Hue King was anxious for him to enter since he could finally get his revenge. But to his misfortune, the duration of the double entanglement ability came to an end, and they were separated. Xinyan was confused, as in the system space, she had been boxing, and at that moment, the catfish opened the door and found them face to face. Hue King told Xinyan to get ready to fight the catfish, as he was furious to see the little octopus alive again. This time he didn't want to let it escape, so he threw a punch, but just before his punch could land, Xinyan grabbed his hand. Hue King took advantage of this moment and used his ability to spray ink on the catfish. Then Xinyan kicked him in the groin, causing him to fall to the ground in pain. After they fled the house, as soon as they reached the garden, they encountered Quirong, who grabbed Xinyan's arm upon knowing that a commoner had struck her marine beast. Upon hearing this, Xinyan punched Quirong in the face. Hue King tried to stop her because they needed to escape as soon as possible. Due to the punch, Quirong fell to the ground, and Xinyan began to beat her again, as she remembered that Quirong used to mistreat her when she was her servant. With a bruised face, Quirong called all her maids to come and help her. Upon hearing this, Hue King tried to stop her since they couldn't fight in enemy territory. However, she ignored him as she wanted to keep hitting Quirong until the maids arrived. After a few minutes, the maids arrived, and Xinyan took this opportunity to escape. She quickly jumped onto a wall. The maids tried to help Quirong, but she refused their help and ordered them to catch Xinyan. While Xinyan was on the wall, she taunted Quirong, calling her an unpleasant old lady. After this, she jumped off the wall, further infuriating Quirong. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, the catfish was writhing in pain. At that moment, he began to hear someone asking for help. When he looked to see where the voice was coming from, he realized it was the dragon crocodile. He asked for help to get back to his room as he wanted to see Ningyi as soon as possible to have his wounds bandaged. He had been lucky to encounter the catfish instead of the maids, as he couldn't reveal his hiding place, or the giant crab from the Ba Trading Association would find him, and he'd be in big trouble. The catfish led him to his room, and Ningy arrived quickly. He had sent the maids to search for the little octopus and Xinian. For the next day, he planned to post reward posters throughout the city. The dragon crocodile told him that tomorrow would be too late. It was already 10 p.m., and they had 2 hours left until the next day. In those 2 hours, if they left by car, they could reach the capital. By train, they could get to the country's capital, and by plane, they could make it to Tokyo. Ningy and the catfish were confused by what they were hearing. The dragon crocodile explained that he wouldn't have a chance of survival if the little octopus joined forces with the giant crab from the Ba Trading Association. Ningy had to leave to prepare for the ancient tower test, which would begin in a few days. The dragon crocodile was pleased to hear this and regained his energy, knowing that the little octopus would also participate in the test. He still had men available to deal with him, preventing him from joining the giant crab. Afterward, the dragon crocodile ordered the catfish to find the old turtle, as he had an urgent task for him. Meanwhile, Xinian and Huekang were escaping from the maids through the Coral City marketplace. Xinian couldn't understand why the maids paid so much attention to an old lady who mistreated them and paid them so little. After several minutes, they turned into an alley. The maids were relieved, thinking it was a dead-end alley. However, they only found an elderly man selling lamb skewers when they turned the corner. Confused, they asked the man if he had seen a girl around. The old man told them she had climbed and jumped over the wall, which left them amazed at Xinian's ability to easily scale tall walls. Unbeknownst to them, the elderly man was just Huekang using his camouflage ability. When the maids left, Xinian asked him how his performance looked. He was furious because there were no lamb skewers in the sea, and she explained she saw them in cartoons. While they were arguing, the giant crab from the Ba Trading Association appeared and asked if they had a license. In their previous lives, they used to steal licenses to sell fruits illegally, and now in this world, they were facing the consequences. The giant crab started waving the sign to hurry them up. Upon seeing this, Xinian asked if they should beat him up. Huekang used the system to check the basic information of the crab, but when he looked at the crab, the system didn't allow him to see its level. At that moment, he remembered that this crab was the same one from the charity association, so he thought it was just a regular store employee. Therefore, they wouldn't have any problems if they beat him up. So, Xinian gave him a strong kick to the face, sending him flying. Now, she could continue to beat him while Huekang kept an eye on the area to ensure nobody intervened. The giant crab was confused, as he didn't know why he was being attacked. After receiving several blows, the crab grabbed a chair and got angry. Huekang was confused because he thought it was a levelless NPC. Then a system window appeared, stating that he couldn't view the basic information of characters with 50 levels higher than him. At that moment, he realized the giant crab had at least 50 levels more than him. The crab raised another sign, declaring that the negotiation was over and he now considered them dangerous criminals. Seeing that they couldn't defeat him, they began to flee, and the crab started following them in anger. While they were running, Xinian tripped and fell to the ground, and the crab took the opportunity to move its claw closer to catch her. Desperately, she tried to ask for help from Huekang, but he didn't hear her and continued to run. Seeing that she had no way out, she grabbed one of Huekang's tentacles. He told her to let go of his tentacle because in this situation, she should sacrifice herself so that he could escape. She had no intention of letting go, as she wanted to die by his side so they could be reborn together. They both began to argue, and after several minutes, bubbles appeared and enveloped their bodies. They tried to escape, but no matter how hard they tried, they were unable to. This was a remotely controlled ability by the giant crab. Using the bubbles, the crab began to transport them, and after several minutes, they arrived at mansion number 8 of the Ba Commercial Association. Upon entering the mansion, they were attended to by guards who led them to Ba's office. Seeing the decoration, they both knew they had entered a very luxurious mansion, much more opulent than Quirong's house. They had gotten themselves into a big problem once again. The crab arrived in a room where Ba's secretary opened the door for them. Upon entering the room, the crab deactivated the bubble ability, causing Xinian to fall on top of Huekang. But he suffered no harm due to his very soft body. Looking around, they saw Uncle Ba from the south, the contractor. He had signed a contract with the giant crab. He was the president of the Ba Commercial Association, and he had control over 80% of the economic transactions in the entire Coral City. The giant crab told Uncle Ba everything that had happened. He introduced himself as Ba, the president of the Ba Commercial Association. Huekang and Xinian also introduced themselves. They thought of him as the bad guy from movies who buried people in cement barrels and threw them into the sea. Ba knew everything that had occurred and believed that they had shown a lot of courage by attacking his sea beast. If they had asked him for help with the license, he would have been happy to assist. However, not only had they set up an unlicensed shop in his territory, but they had also dared to attack one of his men. Their actions showed no respect for Uncle Ba, and he didn't know how to punish them for what they had done. Afraid, Hue King told him that it was impossible as his name was more famous than Roaring Thunder, and he had endless admiration for him, like the waters of an endless, mighty river. Xinyan told him that she had been a devoted fan of his since birth and considered herself his #1 fan. At that moment, Uncle Ba realized that the phrases they were using were from movies, so he asked if they were from another world. Hue King began to blame Xinyan for referencing movies, as they were now in trouble. All the reincarnated individuals had to reach the pinnacle to survive, and the easiest way was by eliminating other reincarnated individuals. Immediately, Uncle Ba knew they had faced the Dragon Crocodile Kid. Seeing that they had escaped, he believed they had some ability. Hue King, upon realizing this, remembered that the Dragon Crocodile's chest wound was from his fight with Uncle Ba. At that moment, Uncle Ba's secretary entered and informed them that the Q family wanted to post a new bounty mission. Desperately, Xinyan told him that they had been caught and were in serious trouble. The reward for the maid and the octopus was 6,000 seashell pearls. Uncle Ba compared them to the bounty poster to see if they were the same fugitives. Hue King realized that Uncle Ba's influence and wealth were greater than that of the Q family. Previously, he couldn't access the crab's level, so his level was higher than the Dragon Crocodile Kid's. He had referred to the Dragon Crocodile Kid with a very derogatory tone, so he knew they didn't get along well. Uncle Ba didn't need money, so as long as they could fulfill his desires, he had no reason to hand them over to the Q family. With his wealth, he would likely dismiss this small reward as long as they could please him, creating an opportunity for him not to turn them in. Uncle Ba began comparing them to the poster, first looking at Xinyan, and she said she wasn't the one on the poster. Then, he looked at Hue King, and he told him that he could be or not be the one, but that depended entirely on Uncle Ba. He put his hands on his chin, and at that moment, Hue King felt relief, thinking they still had a chance. So, he got down on his knees and told him that he wanted to work for him since he was always working on big projects. Immediately, Xinyan understood the situation, so she also got on her knees and told him that she wanted to be his subordinate. The giant crab and Uncle Ba started to consider if they could be useful in some way. Uncle Ba told them that he would not publish the Q family's reward if they could eliminate the whole family. They didn't know if they could eliminate the entire Q family. Upon seeing that they didn't want to accept the task, he told his secretary to post the reward. Xinu panicked and started blaming Hue King for everything. He approached Uncle Ba and told him they could talk to reach an agreement. He wasn't like the Dragon Crocodile, he was a businessman who always respected the customer's needs. At that moment, Hue King had an idea. He asked if he could wait a few days before posting the reward since he also wanted to become their customer. Traders were easy to deal with because they didn't care about political position, they only cared about profit. But to become Uncle Ba's customer, they needed to have some prestige in Coral City. Currently, they had no reputation, so Uncle Ba planned to give them a chance to gain some reputation. He ordered the giant crab to give them a map and information about the first stage and then take them to see Coral City to see if they wanted to accept this new task. For now, he planned to postpone the Q family's reward because within 7 days, the first stage of the Ancient Tower Challenge would begin. If Hue King could overcome the challenge, the Baba Corporation would consider him a premium customer, and they wouldn't issue his wanted order. He gave them several days to make a decision, and their success or failure depended entirely on their actions. Upon hearing this, both of them were relieved. Uncle Ba had left them with no other choice but to accept the mission. If Hue King couldn't pass the test, he couldn't obtain the Baba Corporation's protection, and his reward would become public. Unlike the Dragon Crocodile, Uncle Ba was very cunning and unpredictable because he had asked them to make a decision, and he didn't care if they escaped or not because he could post the reward. At that moment, Xinyan began to mock the giant crab because Uncle Ba was better at making the right decisions. The giant crab got angry, and both of them prostrated themselves at his feet, begging for forgiveness. Using his bubble ability, he handed them the map of Coral City and its surroundings. The ancient tower was located in the center of Coral City, so Hue King asked for information about the ancient tower's trial. At first, he created tension in the atmosphere, but after he happily accepted. According to the July tide calendar, this calendar was based on the rules of the movements of the sun and the moon, and today was July 6th. He needed to prepare for the test of the first layer of the ancient tower. Finally, alongside the giant crab, they arrived at the ancient tower. Xinyu wanted to take a photo, but he refused since they hadn't come to play. The ancient tower was not just a tourist attraction. The Atlantic Ocean was divided into several sea layers. The layer they were currently in was the first layer called the Sunny Layer. In this layer resided the civilization of the Atlanteans in the Coral City as the core. Character levels outside the city ranged from 1 to 20. The only way to travel between different sea layers was the ancient tower. Within each sea layer was a trial arena, and in each ancient tower trial, the only current winner of the layer could qualify to enter the next sea layer. The deeper sea layers contain more riches, treasures, and resources for sea beasts and Atlanteans to level up. Great fighters like the dragon crocodile and the giant crab had already explored the lower layers. But luckily, beginners in the first layer only had levels between 1 and 20, which meant that if he accepted the test, he would only have to face opponents with levels lower than 20. But if he didn't accept, Uncle Ba would post his reward order, which would be very bad for him, as high-level Atlanteans and sea creatures wouldn't need to venture into the depths of the sea to have the chance to earn a reward. They would only need to catch a small octopus. Right now, his best option was to accept the test as soon as possible. But he needed to level up to be a match for his opponents. So he asked the giant crab about the most chaotic place outside the city. After thinking for several seconds, the giant crab told him that the most dangerous place was the suburbs of the coral reef. This was where he had been reborn. He got excited and told him to inform Uncle Bob because he wanted to accept the ancient tower test. But first, he wanted to train in the chaos of the coral reef suburbs to level up. Both Xinian and the giant crab wondered why he wanted to go to the most chaotic place. He explained that the more chaotic the place, the more enemies there were to fight. He wanted to level up quickly, so he had to put in maximum effort. From what he had seen so far, the system rewarded him for defeating enemies, even if they were already injured. In chaotic areas with frequent conflicts, there would be many weak monsters for him to attack and defeat easily. He couldn't level up in the Coral City because it had already been completely divided by higher forces like Uncle Bob and the Dragon Crocodile. The only place where they could stand out was in chaotic areas, so they headed to the suburbs of the coral reef. At that moment, the catfish saw them and quickly returned to the Q family mansion to tell the dragon crocodile that he had seen the little octopus and the crab from the Ba Association. He didn't know how they had ended up working together. Dingy informed him that the Baba Association was going to post the wanted order in a week. Upon hearing this, the dragon crocodile no longer had doubts that the giant crab and the little octopus were now accomplices. He panicked because he thought the crab surely knew he was hiding in the Q family's house. At that moment, the old turtle arrived. He was the dragon crocodile's messenger, known as the half-masked shadow ninja. He only called the old turtle in cases of extreme urgency. This time, he asked him to investigate the relationship between the octopus and the giant crab. After the investigation, the little octopus could be eliminated, and the elimination of the giant crab had to be done discreetly. The old turtle jumped onto the roof of the house to start tracking them using his divine shell technique. The ability indicated that they were currently in the outer area of the coral reef. Meanwhile, Hue Kang and the others were heading towards the most chaotic area in the entire coral city, and Xinian had changed her clothes. Earlier in the day, Xinian wanted to change her clothes because she didn't like what she was wearing. He knew that if they were going to buy clothes, she would take at least 5 hours to try them on. Since they currently didn't have money to buy clothes, he tried to ask the crab for help because time for the mission was running out. The crab took out a sign and told Xinian that new members of the Baba Association were allowed to buy a set for free. Seeing this, Hue King got angry with the crab, and that's how they wasted half a day. Now they had only 6.5 days left for the test. Upon arriving in the suburbs of the coral reef, they saw many troublesome sea creatures. At that moment, a beggarfish touched Xinian's dress and tried to ask for some alms. Xinian got angry and gave the beggarfish a strong kick. The beggarfish tried to use moral blackmail, but it didn't work and ended up getting a beating. The system rewarded them with 0.01 experience points for defeating the beggarfish. As its level was very low, the system had granted them very few points. At that moment, a level 5 Atlantean girl named Tiang Ren came out of her house. Upon seeing the injured beggarfish, she asked why he had resorted to begging again if she had given him food. The beggarfish told her that they had beaten him up for asking them for money, even though there were many bullies in the area. This was the first time Ren had seen them. She was about to teach them a lesson, but upon seeing the Baba Association logo, she went home with the beggarfish. For Hue Kang, this was very strange because Atlanteans lived in the Coral City, and he didn't know why she was living in the coral reef area. On the way, Ren bumped into a giant shark.